Hi peoples, it's me, Gabrielle, back at it again with another redrawing Speedpaint. So today we have Maury and Iggy from 2019, and this art isn't bad per se, but it's just a nice example of my progression of art style. This is when I totally disregarded doing line art at all, and I would just color my sketches and use weird brushes for random textures for highlights and shading and stuff. So I thought this would be a fun one to redraw because I have come a long way, not only with anatomy and poses, but also just overall vibe. And here I am looking for their height difference reference because reference is good. And I had a lot of trouble with the sketch of this Speedpaint because I was trying to get the poses right, so I used myself as reference. I was taking pictures of myself with my phone from behind and like seeing what my face looked like, even though me and Iggy do not have the same face shape. But the angle and how much eye is showing was really what I was looking for, and like nose and whatever, and that in terms of him, even though our noses are different too. But alas, it's for the foundational basics of what would be showing and what wouldn't. So I wanted to keep the overall vibe of this drawing, especially like with the clothes. Like I kept the clothes the same, and the hairstyles I updated a little bit just to make them a little bit more accurate to how they are now. But I didn't have Iggy's hair fully done up as he usually does when it's like slicked back. I kept its messy emo self. And for Amori, I strayed away from the Keiko copy hair that I loved doing in 2018 to 19 for some reason. And I gave her wolf cut, but just a little shorter because I thought it was cute. And now I'm like, oh my god, do I have her cut her hair again? No, I'm keeping her hair long, and it's lore and plot significance too that her hair is long because her parents are bad people. And people say silly things like, oh my god, like she had short hair when she was younger. Oh my god, she's a boy. It's like, no, tomboys exist, and so do kids who were forced to cut their hair short when they were younger and weren't allowed to grow them out. Grow them out. Yes, grow their hair out. Bruh. So yeah, that was kind of Amori's deal. So now she wants to grow her hair out as long as possible and have it a long, luscious mane, but also like kind of chaotic. So bruh. Pretty much the same goes for like the line art, even though like with the old drawing, like I said before, it was a time where I was fed up with line art. I didn't want to do line art, and I wanted to kind of dip my toes into that like painting style, that digital painting style, even though I didn't really know how to go about doing it. And I wanted to do these like fully rendered pieces that, you know, didn't have line art, and the shading and depth in the piece made it look like, I guess, a picture, like a picture that was taken or a painted picture. So I thought I would achieve the same thing if I just colored the line art, even though yes, people do that, and yes, it kind of gives that same vibe. But I also didn't know that a lot had to go into the painting process and rendering process to do that and to make it look very detailed. But thinking back to like when I drew this was just like a little doodle sketch, like me screwing around thing and trying out this art style with just doing the sketch as the line art. I do have a lot of art from this time where I was trying to achieve the painted look, even though I gave up because I was like, okay, screw it, this is just not meant for me. I just have to go back to doing line art. Even though like now I am capable of just going straight to rendering and not doing any lines, like no line work. Me personally, I like how line art looks, and it makes me think of like even if I did 3D rendered models of my characters, which I do want to do in the future. I want to get back into Blender because my old computer literally pooped itself when I tried doing Blender, but I'm gonna try it again now that I have a new computer and see what I'm capable of. But if I, like, when I make the 3D rendered models, I'm still going to use, like, the grease pencil tool to give them a sort of quote-unquote line art feel, because I want it to be, like, that stylistic animation style 3D rendered look, similar to, like, I guess, like, oh, Across the Spider-Verse or Arcane. But even before, like, Arcane came out, and when it was just, like, trailers or whatever, people compared my art style to that, which is, like, the biggest compliment, because that show is a masterpiece. I have had my art compared to Across the Spider-Verse, Into the Spider-Verse, the Walking Dead Telltale games, Borderlands, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, but that's also because I use, like, so many lines on the face, just, like, random lines all over the place, so that's understandable. Even when I'm making them, like, 3D, or, like, just rendering them fully, I still want them to have that line art feel, and, like, very stylistic. So when I try to do the hyper realism stuff, it just feels wrong to me. Like, I've tried to do it before, and I have done it, but it's just, I like how it looks, but in terms of, like, oh yeah, that's my character, like, that's my OC, like, it kind of just feels weird to me, and it feels wrong. So I don't know if that's just a me problem, but it probably is. But I just kind of, I want it to be stylized. Like, I don't want it to be super cartoony. Like, if this were to be an animated series or a show or a video game or something, I wouldn't want it to be a 2D thing. And I wouldn't want it to be a live action thing, because I can't have that hyper realism, because I want it to still be stylized. And again, like I said last video with this redrawing stuff, I wanted to achieve this cartoony, still painted looking art style while keeping the 2D effects of, like, having it as a flat drawing. And again, I think I did a pretty good job of evolving my style to that. I mean, again, always room for improvement, especially, like, looking back at this. Like, I still do like the old art, but it's just, I didn't know how to color. Like, I really didn't know how to color. I was getting the hang of, like, oh, cool shadow means warm light, or cool light means warm shadow, even though now I don't, like, always follow that, even though I do use, for the most part, like, warm shadow, cool light, and sometimes warm light, but, like, this purple color could go either way, so it doesn't, I'm not really a stickler about that kind of stuff, because it just, I screw around and I go with what looks cool. And that's pretty much, like, all of my art pieces, where I'm like, okay, this looks good, whatever. And that's kind of how I figured out the blending modes that I like, with, like, the linear burn and color burn, like, weird layered thing that I do, because the color burn just pops out more warmth than color, causing the linear burn to, like, muddle everything out, and I don't know, the combination is just goated in my opinion. Even though now, like, I do follow, like, some rules, I follow a lot of rules, because some things just do naturally look better than others, and I don't go fully off the rails, but in terms of, like, line weight, that's one thing that I forgot to bring up last video. I think line weight is very important, as well as sharp shadows and, like, blended out shadows. There needs to be a lot of variety in that. Line weight in the sense of, like, line art. And like I said before, my line art is far from perfect, but I do like line variation, and I feel like that brings a lot of character to the kind of line art that I do, to make it more natural, more flowy, more gritty and gross. And for sharp shadows and, like, soft shadows, I guess, I do like variety in that, because that also adds to the painted texture and feel of the art. So as you see on Iggy's, like, cheekbone, I have the line that I made from just painting the color, and then also I blended it out, but I didn't blend it out fully. Even though I feel like I could have done a better job at, like, rendering his face, but I drew this last night at, like, 12 a.m. Or I colored it at 12 a.m. So I was kind of just like, okay, it's good enough. I'll redraw it again in another 4 years. So yeah, but it looks good. It looks good. It's still good. It gets a pass from me. And that's another thing. When I was talking last video about the over-rendered hair, that's another thing that I wanted to bring up in this video. You gotta match the vibes in terms of rendering. Like, it could be done right, where it's like, oh, okay, I'm drawing this like really super in detail face, and then all of a sudden the shirt is just like one solid blank color. Like, I have done things like that, and that's cool if it's done correctly. Me personally, I'm not really that capable of doing stuff like that. People that can do that and like mixed media stuff, super cool, good for you, awesome. But when it comes to like hair and like over rendering the hair but not everything else, that just kind of gives off like
jump scare
6-year-old drawing something, like drawing a person for the first time and drawing every single strand of hair rather than like separating it into chunks. Probably gonna get a lot of hate for this, but it's good to study anime as an art style, even though it's like, oh, but you know, proportions, and it, you know, screws up people's learning or whatever, and you know, anatomy, and realistic proportions and people and things and drawing, whatever. Okay, but when it comes to things like hair, I think the whole anime art style does a good job of like separating into like sections and pieces rather than going super into detail with this stuff. And then I guess the eyes, that's where I would say like to stay away from it, even though the way I draw eyes now is there's resemblance, but I went there's like 2 roads you could go down when you're a beginner artist. You could go down the anime route, or you just go into like hyper realism, or like try to. So I wanted to do the more cartoony stuff, so that just is built into my drawing DNA, I guess. But when it comes to like eyes and stuff, doing the super hyper realistic eyes and then like the super cartoony everything else, that just looks mad weird. It does for the hair as well, so you gotta dumb it down and make sure everything is simplified to the same level, and it'll just flow better as a piece. It's cool to see the progression of like 4 years ago to now, and it's always fun to do redraws, and I do want to keep doing these because I do have some good ones picked out and that I think you guys are really gonna enjoy, that are like a big shock to where I started and where I am now. But also, this piece is a good checkpoint staple marker of like how my art style has progressed. And like here I tried to simple it down. I used blending layers more rather than just muddling a bunch of colors together on the same layer compared to what I did in 2017. So this is definitely a good sign of me getting somewhat better and learning. Some of the brushes that I was using were a little weird, but I eventually find the right brushes, you know, just many years later. So the brushes I use now I absolutely love, and they're just in the base Photoshop deal, which is crazy. But yeah, so that is all I have for this video. I hope you like the comparison, I hope you like the art, I hope you like the finished product, and yeah, that's all I have. So I will see you in the next video. Bye, ciao, ta-ta, toodles.